So, um, for my audience, I just started recording because I liked what you were talking about, your story. So,
Right.
tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm Keith Evans. I'm a paranormal investigator. I've been doing paranormal investigations since I was a little kid, which my parents weren't very excited about that at all. And to this day, the ones that are still living still think that I'm certifiable crazy, even though I'm not. And they think that anyone believes in ghosts and spirits aren't very intelligent, but I consider myself to be very intelligent. And I more or less try to get a personal relationship with the ghost and spirit. I don't go in with guns blazing, thinking that every ghost and spirit is evil or demonic. I just kind of talk to them like I would talk to anyone else that I met on the street. That if you want a ghost and spirit to feel comfortable with you, you have to treat them with respect and treat them in the way that they want to talk to you. And a lot of times, ghosts and spirits will choose to talk to whoever they find interesting. You know, I'm the type of person I haven't, even though I live in Florida, I haven't went fishing since 1978, and I've never owned a boat. I've only been out on a boat a couple times, and most of that was with the Army. And I just, a ghost or spirit may not find me interesting. So most people think, well, if you're really good at what you do, paranormal researching, every ghost or spirit will talk to you. No, it's just like in life. Not everyone likes you and not wants to talk to you. Not everyone finds you interesting. If I go into a place and start talking to a person that's deeply religious, they'll just get up and walk away from me. You know, I've told people that I was a paranormal researcher, and they look at me and say, "So you're a devil worshiper?" And I say, "No, it has nothing to do with that." So people have all types of beliefs that aren't true about other people. So as a paranormal researcher, I try to be very open-minded, especially with ghosts and spirits. And I've been to places that even where people say it's very, very negative energy, and I haven't
Yeah.
seen that. And I feel a lot of people misconstrue places of great anxiety and great loss, like a hospital, as something being evil. But you know, if you go into a place where there's been a lot of energy, where someone found out that a loved one died, or even the patient found out they were going to die, that's a lot of residual energy that is pretty negative and pretty sad and pretty profound. So when you go paranormal researching there, you're going to find it. And, you know, you can't always label anything that's not upbeat and happy as being evil or demonic. So I've always tried to treat the ghosts and spirits the way I would like to be treated. And I think that's the reason why I get more paranormal activity when I do paranormal research. And I didn't purchase any paranormal equipment until probably 2011. And that's when I started working with um, the lab there in Houston for Custom Border Protection. It's a laboratory of scientific services. So I started to make some really good money then because I didn't get my degree in chemistry until I was 50. So I got the job with Custom Border Protection as a forensic scientist when I was 53. And, you know, I had extra money and I thought, well, why not go ahead and buy some of
Right.
the paranormal equipment? I think the first thing I ordered was the Ovilus. Back then it was the Ovilus 4. And it took a while to get it because the company that I ordered it from had backlog orders. So the second thing I ordered was the millimeter. I got the millimeter first and started doing paranormal research with that. And, I really got some good results and a lot of, uh, high electromagnetic readings. And then when the Atlas 4 came in, I really got some intelligent responses right away. And then sometimes I felt like, well, I'm just getting jibber jabber. And I think a lot of times the ghosts and spirits that are in the area are actually communicating between themselves, and you get a lot of cross talk because I don't think the Atlas 5, if they can pick up what a ghost or spirit wants to tell me, they can probably pick up a conversation between two ghosts and spirits that, they might be talking about something totally different than what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
I just find that having the equipment kind of is like a secondary support to show that your data at sometimes is very real and very intelligent responses. Now, of course, everyone says, well, how do you know it's a dead person? Well, possibility it could be a dead person. It could be a person from another dimension who somehow can communicate with people on Earth through whatever means. And it could be some type of intelligent space being who is monitoring it and responding just for fun, just to, yank my chain. So there are other possibilities, and I can't say for sure, but I like to believe in most cases it's a ghost or a spirit that's communicating with me. And most of the ghosts and spirits that I've communicated with are down to earth. They're pretty normal people. They're just like us, except they no longer have a biological body. And most of them are decent and kind, and if anything, neutral towards me. I've never really got anything that was threatening. One time, I wasn't doing a paranormal research at all, but I had a ghost of spirit, punched me on the right jaw, and it just snapped my. I went like really quick. I won't do it because my neck will hurt. But that was, and I thought, well, it could be some type of muscle spasm. But whatever it was, I wouldn't want it to happen again. And when it happened, I didn't even let on like it happened because I figured I don't want to give the ghost and the spirit that did that any intel on how he's affected me so he does it again. So I really feel that if you're ever, as a paranormal researcher, if you're ever in a threatening position, don't allow the ghost and spirit to know what all is happening to you because then they can gauge how they can use their energy against you. I would say just keep a low profile. And I think a lot of times people do their acting for TV, and that's why I'll probably never be on TV.
Right. Um, so you think, uh, what I'd like to know is what is going on? How many different types of ghosts and spirits are there, do you think? Like, and I don't need a solid number, but what do you think's going on there with different types of ghosts or spirits?
Well, I think once we pass away, there's always a possibility that our soul, which is our electromagnetic energy, will be recycled. So I'm not sure that every ghost and spirit who's ever died is always going to stay a ghost or spirit outside of a biological body. Probably a lot of them will just be recycled back into another biological body. Reincarnation is the term. And all I can say is if they see something they like about you, it's just like your friends and the family that you do like, if you have something in common, it's going to bring you together with that ghost and spirit. And most people, use the term attachment, and I find that too negative, or very negative. And I don't see if a ghost or spirit wants to hang out with me and do things like put down the toilet lid and turn lights on and off and open my door and not shut it tight, then I know, they're doing whatever they're doing, but I don't let it bother me. It's a common occurrence. I remember one time I was used to reading in the dark, I guess from the army, trying to read at low light or low sunlight or cloudy days without using any light at all. And I was sitting in a chair, and the ghost or spirit turned on the light for me, and I just said, "Thank you for turning on the light." So that are my common experiences with ghosts and spirits in the place that I live right now. I've lived in places where there wasn't much going on at all. When I first moved from Maryland to Florida back in 1993, so I could be closer to my daughter, I lived in a place where if you walked into the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror, you could feel wind coming through um, the bathroom window that was totally shut, and you go outside and it's not windy, and that was paranormal. And in certain areas, the paranormal that I experienced would be limited. And also in that same place, one afternoon, I heard someone say, "Keith," just like that. And I was sitting with no TV on, no radio on, just sitting there. It usually happens in the afternoon if I'm going to hear my name called. It also happened after Hurricane Michael. I was sitting in at that time, I was living at the Hayes House, which is where I wrote my first book. I did paranormal research there for about a year and wrote the book, The Hayes House Ghost or People, too. I don't see if I can get it aimed so the people can see the book. Can you see it pretty good?
Yeah.
Now, the Hayes House Ghost or People, too, is no longer in paperback, but it's still available on Kindle. And I stayed there after Hurricane Michael because the place I was living at in Mexico Beach just got destroyed. So when I moved into the Hayes house, the owners had found out about my place being destroyed, and they said, "Well, why don't you rent a third floor apartment?" And I'm so glad I had that opportunity to live there, even though it was a short period of time. They sold the Hayes house like in March. So I was only there from like the end of October to maybe the 1st of March. But while I was there, I all my paranormal equipment got destroyed and washed away during the storm surge of Hurricane Michael. So I was able to purchase a millimeter and a thermal imager, and that's the only thing I had during that period of time. I wish I could have had the Obelisk 5B. I ordered it from a company that never ever sent it, and they finally gave my money back, which took about 6 months.
My gosh.
So while I was there, one afternoon I was sitting in a chair, and it was at the far northeast side of the room, and I heard a voice from the opposite corner, the southwest side of the room, say, "Keith." And I thought, well, maybe I didn't lock the door at the bottom of the steps, because the third floor apartment, your door almost looks like a closet door, but you open it up, and it's a very narrow stairway that goes up to the third floor apartment. So I thought somebody probably walked up and wanted me, and I looked up and nobody is there. So that's only a few times in my life I've heard someone say my name, and it's always, I would say, around, say, 1 p.m. to about 3 p.m. is the area time that it happens, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah.
So I have no idea. It totally could have been. It was a voice that sounded like a lady, not a high pitched voice, but a regular type tone female voice. So it could
Hmm.
have been Kathleen Hayes. I have heard her voice on historical tapes where she was talking about the history of Apalachicola. So anyway, I really got to do a lot of in-depth paranormal research that's not even in the book because I had already published a book. I think it was August or early September 2018, and Hurricane Michael hit. I think it was October 10th, 2018. So, but in the Hayes house, so much happens when you're not even trying to do paranormal research. Like when I would lay down to go to sleep, I could I could just look and with my eyes wide open, hear someone stomp across the floor from the east to the west
Yeah.
in front of my bed, and there's nobody there. And I'm a little over 200 pounds, and when I got up and tried to stomp, I couldn't make a stomping sound. It's impossible. I think there was a rug on the ground, but no matter how hard I tried to stomp, it's just impossible. So my theory there is it could be some type of residual energy.
Hmm.
And also laying in bed, it would sound like somebody just about uh, the steps to the Hayes house, the front stairway, had two landings before you got to the top. So it sounded like somebody was about 2 or 3 steps from the second landing and then ran and stomped as they got there, and then turned and came up the other 2 steps. But there was never anyone in the house, and when I looked, nobody was there.
Hmm.
So the unusual running up the stairs, and it was always in that same area. I would say almost towards the top of the stairway.
Yeah.
So stuff like that probably would have been very interesting for the book, but
Probably.
I didn't have a chance to live there. Now, the owners who owned the Hayes house, they had given me written permission for the book and to do paranormal research, and they also had given me a key, so I could have went and just discreetly stayed overnight, but I never did. I always just went during the day and let them know when I'm coming and let them know when I'm leaving because it was a 3-story Victorian style house that was built in 1908 by Jeff Buck, and so they used it as like Airbnb. They rented out space for artists in Apalachicola to come and paint because Apalachicola is a big art town,
Yeah.
and so it was used for a number of things over the years. And at the same time, I was very discreet about my paranormal research because some people they don't want to do or stay or sleep in a place where someone has done paranormal research. And
Right.
that's how touchy most people are about the ghosts and spirits. And it doesn't faze me a bit.
So, how many books have you written?
Well, 2 altogether. The Hayes House Ghost or People 2 was written in, published in about late August or early September 2018. And then my second book, Vampires Dead or Alive, was published October of 2024. I can show you that book right now. Can you see it?
Yeah.
I'll show you the back.
Yeah, I'll put links well, can you still buy the Hayes House book or not?
You can, but only as an ebook.
Oh, gotcha.
It's only
Okay.
available as an ebook.
Yeah,
Now,
if you send me the link where people can buy that, I'll put that in. I know you can buy the other book on Amazon.
I used to have the links, and I don't know where I put them or stored them.
Yeah. Or I'll just find it then.
But I don't know. It seems like me and computers are just not compatible. It's like today, I try to switch, I guess, over to another server with my email,
Yep.
and it just didn't work.
Right.
So, and when it opened up, it only opened up a really small window.
Yeah.
So I might have to switch back or see what I can do to change that. But it looks like from now on, I'm going to be on my cell phone if any podcast that I do.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier.
Yeah, I agree. And
Um,
the book, Vampires Dead or Alive, it's kind of like a lifetime of me thinking about vampires. I always enjoyed the TV program when I was in middle school called Dark Shadows,
yeah. Yeah.
and it came on in the evening.
Yep.
So I always kind of felt like Barnabas Collins was a hero. I liked him. I thought he was cool. So I always wondered, how do vampires do what they do? And, everyone thought of a vampire as being dead. And so my book pretty much takes every chapter is a characteristic of a vampire. And it looks at, is a vampire more like a dead person or a living person? And then it takes the characteristic. For instance, like if the characteristic is they're able to just disappear in thin air, I try to explain how they do that. And more or less, I think some way a vampire can warp space and time. They have some type of small black hole where they can warp space and time just for themselves, not for the whole environment that they're in. And when they warp space and time, they can go back to when they were just a spirit. It did not have a biological body. And I think that's how they're able to just disappear in thin air. So
Yeah.
that's the way the book goes. And the book is short. It's a little less than 50 pages, but there's no fluff. There's no build up to it. There's just
Yeah.
the information that is new and information I think people would like to know. I've always wondered how does a vampire change into a shapeshift, change to a bat or a werewolf, or how does a vampire stay in front of a mirror and not have a reflection? So I tackle characteristics like that by stating personally what I think and using scientific methods and scientific everything from genetics to astro space type subjects like black holes and wormholes to describe how I feel a vampire can do what they do.
Yeah.
And how many dead people will have a reflection in a mirror. So anyway, so the fact that a vampire was dead would not preclude it from having a reflection in a mirror. But anyway, I tackle different ways that a vampire may avoid having a reflection in a mirror. And if you can bend light around you so light don't hit you, then there's a possibility you can stand in front of a mirror and not be seen, theoretically.
Yeah.
And also, if you are being projected straight into a human being's brain, I don't know, they call it, I'm trying to think of the term, but you can just send your thoughts and your video and your
Telepathy.
audio so that only that person's brain is receiving it, then you're not physically there. So if that's being done, then you won't have a reflection in the mirror.
True. True. Um, so I've seen a bunch of videos of you looking at graves or like cleaning up around them and stuff. So what's that all about?
Well, usually it's in some cases I'm actually doing the cleanup.
Yeah.
In other cases, I just go to places that someone is taking care of it. One reason is it's much easier to see the tombstone if someone cuts the trees around it or the limbs around, the bottom of the tree that's growing there. But I also like to show that we have a responsibility to preserve the cemeteries.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, they're going to be lost to time.
Oh yeah.
So I try to do um, an educational type thing about paranormal, communicating with the dead, and also how to respect and save these old cemeteries so they just aren't lost to time. And one way to respect and save them is to cut the trees down and don't let the trees grow in the first place and just plant nice grass and keep it cut. And at the same time, trees and pollen will build up on tombstones after 100 or so years, and you'll get a very um, black or dark colored yellow type tombstone, which can be cleaned off, but I've never cleaned a tombstone before. I've taken brooms and swept dirt off of and leaves and stuff like that, grass and all off of the top of full grave cradles. And some of the full grave cradles have really interesting designs on them. So you can't really get the benefit of it if there's dirt and debris on top. So, but I would hope more people would just take it upon themselves to go out and if they see a graveyard where grass isn't being mowed, take a weed eater and just work an hour and get as much done as you can. And then if someone sees you doing it, they may say, well, I'll go do it for an hour.
Yeah.
And then, 100 years from now, there'll be a paranormal researcher in there enjoying doing paranormal research at the gravestones and very happy that you had the forethought to save it for them.
Have you ever seen there's TikToks and videos of, and there's YouTube videos too, of the people that clean the gravestones and then they tell the story is at the same time?
I've seen that. Right now, I'm not on TikTok. I was for a while, but I have seen, I guess you could say, videos like that.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it's interesting and it's good because they're much needed to save the tombstones because it's very, I find it very interesting when you do a paranormal research at a tombstone that's 100 years old. I think that's so cool. And we need people to save and preserve those tombstones for future generations of paranormal researchers.
Yeah. I am working on a documentary, and two of the places that we're doing the documentary is in two separate graveyards in the area that I live in. And one of the things that I've been doing, and I haven't done it yet. I've done it, but I haven't listened to the recordings yet, is done a bunch of EVPs at different places within them. But we've held off because we want to film ourselves listening to it.
Right.
But either way, that's one of my favorite things, and I think it's because it's peaceful. Is actually going. I used to eat lunch in a graveyard because it was just peaceful there. I didn't hear anything but the birds and the trees. So I have an affinity for graveyards. It's one of my things that I like to. I don't know. I'm just attracted to it for some reason. Not in a weird way.
Right.
Just I just am.
Well,
So
it used to be that people would pay respect to their relatives and friends that had passed away, and on the weekends would pack a picnic lunch and go to the graveyard and eat just to be, near
near.
where their friend is buried. So that was
Yeah.
very popular. I had read different things about that in the turn of the century, that graveyards are more like parks where people would go to do that. Now, today, most graveyards are overgrown, and unless I go there and do a lot of footage and say where I'm at, then they start to take care of it. So I guess I'm good for something.
Right. The only the only graveyards that I see that are usually really maintained are the like the veterans graveyards, the national cemeteries.
Right.
But they actually contract people to take care of those. So, you know,
That's good.
not everybody has them, right?
Yeah.
But the two graveyards that we've been investigating at are both very well run. So that's nice. You don't have we don't have any overgrown stuff and whatnot. And they maintain the roads and everything. And some of those, I think one of them is because it's a Catholic cemetery. So I think the church actually contracts people to take care of it.
Right.
And then the other one is a, I guess it's a for-profit thing, but the company that owns it actually has a maintenance crew that does work. So
That's good.
it's good to see. But some of these we have a bunch of old, like, I would say they're either family cemeteries or like old soldier cemeteries, like from like the Revolutionary War and stuff, or somebody goes and maintains them. I just don't know who, but those are really cool spots because you've got gravestones from the late 1700s even, and it's pretty. There's just an air to them
Well, I
that's
think
really neat.
at one time in America, they used to allow people to just bury their loved ones on their property.
Right.
So, of course, you'd save a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if the
Yeah.
property don't stay in the family, whoever comes in may not care for it the way you would.
Yeah, we actually have my family has a family cemetery in Illinois, um on the farm where my family started, basically.
Right.
And part of that is the family cemetery, and there's still area around it. But it's because I have a grave site there. E- everybody around has got there's room for everyone. And we sold the farm, but that area is deeded to our family. So we still own the family plot. So
So you
it's kind of
still
neat.
own it?
Yes, we still
That's
own it.
good. That's good.
So yeah. And there's yeah, family members all the way back to the mid 1800s buried there. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty good, cool slice of history.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
so give me one of your favorite paranormal investigations that you've done. Tell me the story. Just choose one.
Well, I had an interesting situation that took place at the 1880 Victorian in St. Augustine, Florida. Um, the owner had given me, written permission to do a book, and which I haven't done yet, but I mention it in my book, Vampires Dead or Alive. So the 1880 Victorian is mentioned in there, but only in one aspect, and that was a young lady that I thought was the owner's daughter, and everyone in Florida who's white is either red or brown because of the hot sun. And
Right.
this young lady was just pale white. So I thought, well, she must not go out in the sun much at all. And she had like shoulder length, brown, tight, curly hair. Kind of like what Shirley Temple had
Yeah.
when she was young and would do all those tap dancing. But this young lady had like dark brown hair or black, and she giggled a lot, like she thought everything was funny. So I thought she was the owner's daughter. And they came down. I was there for about 2 months. It was right during COVID. So the first week that I was there, St. Augustine, this is like downtown, the old city part of St. Augustine with the very narrow one-way streets, and everything was shut down. And it seemed like that week, paranormal was like bouncing off the walls. It's almost like the ghost spirits knew something was wrong when there's no people walking around, you
Right.
know, downtown on the streets of St. Augustine. But anyway, I saw the young lady at least 3 times, no, 2 times. And that was when the owner came down the first time. And the owner came down the first time, there was like nobody in town except me and his family. So, when you heard the car door shut, you looked out to see what was happening. And I saw him and his wife, his sister, and a young lady, 4 of them, walking in. And they came in, and I met them, and I said hello. And he never introduced the young lady. And I thought, well, that's strange. And I thought, well, maybe, she's a teenager and shy, and he just spared her. So anyway, the second time they came down, during the 2 months I was there, they came down like on weekends. Um, all 4 of them were sitting on the front porch. At that time, they had 4 rocking chairs. When I was there, a gentleman from off the street sat down and broke one. So then after that, it was down to 3. But while there were still 4 rocking chairs, the young lady was sitting in the one closest to me as I was walking up for my walk to go into the first floor front porch. And then next to her, I thought was her father, the owner of the house. And then next to him was his wife, and next to his wife was uh, his sister. And he invited me to sit down, and I thought, well, I don't want to chase the young lady out of her chair. So I said, no, I'm going to go on in. I just had a walk. I'll talk to you all later. And then he introduced himself and his wife and his sister, but never introduced the young lady. So I looked at the young lady and I said, are you still in school? And she just kind of giggled and never answered me. And then he answered me like I was talking to him, which is kind of like,
Right.
he said, no, I've been out of school a while. I'm not in school anymore. So I thought, well, that's kind of strange. So the bottom line, to make the story short, nobody else could see the young lady except for me. And
Wow.
so I tied that into my book when it comes to vampires dead or alive as a characteristic. The only one that I could think of where I'm not saying the young lady was a vampire, and I
Right.
think ghosts and spirits can uh, manipulate your brain so that you can see and hear them audio wise and visual wise. And I think that's what that young lady was doing. She was
Hmm.
sending her information, so I was the only one that could see or hear her. And if she was doing it on purpose, I'm not sure if she understood what was happening because she was giggling because I think she thought it was funny that I was the only one that could see her.
Yeah. Of course.
And when I actually saw the second time that the owner was down, he told me they would be leaving early Monday morning and flying out, and I would have the place all to myself. So that morning I got up early and was getting ready to do paranormal research. And I think I walked out with the camera on. I was getting ready to go out anyway and do paranormal research in the hallway and then go up to the second or third floor apartment and complete paranormal research. So I heard a knock on the outside of the door, and I had heard a couple knocks in that area, but it was usually dark out, late at night, and I didn't go outside to see who it was. So this time I was standing there with all my equipment, getting ready to go out anyway. So I opened up the door really quick. That young lady was there, and
Wow.
they had like these flower vases full of stuff. I think one flower vase was full of information about what to do while you're in St. Augustine, and another one was like filled with like matches or whatever. So she took something out of one of those vases and it tapped against the wall. So I
Yeah.
figured, well, that was just accidental. And she had clothes all over the floor. It was the entrance way and hallway going up to the stairway. And she said she could never figure out how to separate the whites in the clothes and which one's for the hot and which one for the cold water. And I said, well, I just throw all mine in together. And she giggled and laughed about that. And I think I even asked her, I asked her if her name was uh, Margaret, because she looked like a young uh, Margaret Key, which
Mhm.
I had been to her house to try to do paranormal research. And I was never able to get permission from the owner. But anyway, actually had a dream about Margaret Key after I went to her house and asked. At that time, I never asked the owner for permission. I just wanted to see what it looked like inside, and it was brilliant. It was original wood. It was original wood, horizontal wall boards, uh, ceiling boards, and floorboards. Everything was original, and you can see the original grain had never been painted over. You can see the original, uh, you know, wooden grain, and it's just, to me, that type of wood is beautiful. Now, some of it may have been painted over, but if so, he restored it to its original
Right.
look. So anyway, that weekend I went back to Texas. That's when I was still working for Custom Border and Protection as a forensic scientist. So I would take the long weekend and go to Florida. So when I got back into the car, it was a rental car, and the rental car was the first time that the seatbelt needed fastening coming on. That meant there was a spirit sitting in the seat, and I figured, well, it's probably Margaret Key, because I knew she was the last person that lived there, and when she passed away, the house was sold. So I told her, I said, I'm getting ready to go out of town, and if you don't go back now, you'd have to go to Houston with me. So I guess I was 5 miles outside west of Apalachicola, and the seatbelt needed fastening light went off, so I knew she had left. But that
Wow.
weekend, or the next weekend, I actually had a dream, and in the dream, this was Margaret Key. That's her married name. I don't know her maiden name, but in the dream, I was in an old second floor, kind of like Victorian type home, and it was almost like I was with a realtor that was trying to sell me the house, where I was just kind of looking at the house for future
Yeah.
paranormal research prospects.
Hmm.
Um, So anyway, I heard a lady crying, and it seemed like a realtor didn't pay any attention. So I walked out in the hall to see who was crying, and there was a elderly lady with gray hair walking up the steps, and she kind of had curly gray hair like this, but not similar, but not 100% like the young lady that I saw at the uh, 1880 Victorian in St. Augustine.
Yeah.
But anyway, the lady that came up the steps, um, she turned away from me and faced into a mirror. There was a mirror at the top of the steps, and I felt so sorry for her. I hugged her, and she just said, "I must not." And then that was the end of the dream. But I could see her face clearly by looking into the mirror.
So
So her
definitely not
face
a
looked
vampire.
a lot like the young lady that I saw at the 1880 Victorian, and that was in 2020. And the situation, that dream that I had was probably somewhere between 2013 and 2016, because I retired in 2016. So anyway, I asked a young lady if her name was Margaret, and she said, "How'd you know my name?" So
Yeah. Yeah.
it was kind of strange. And I didn't, when all this was going on, as a seasoned paranormal researcher, it's humbling because I did not know that I was talking to a ghost or a spirit that no one else could see. And it just seemed to me like, as a ghost or a spirit, she really didn't have any overwhelming message for me. I did ask her to do paranormal research with me because I thought, well, if you're going to be here on Monday, it might be not good to have a family member with me because sometimes it's a good trigger object to get ghosts and spirits to warm up to you and communicate with you.
Yeah.
And she didn't want any parts of that. And this is while I was talking to her while the clothes were on the ground. So anyway, I went back in my apartment, took my equipment, and said, well, I'll wait until she goes home. Because I'm trying to remember. She either said she was going to go home later that day or the next morning. I'm pretty sure it was later that night she said she had a flight. So I went back in, and I don't know what I was doing. I think I was looking at videos, and at that time I was putting them, giving them a title, and putting them into my long-term storage on my external hard drive. That way I wouldn't max out my hard drive on my
Yeah.
computer. So I got busy doing that, and about an hour went by, and I figured, well, an hour is enough to do a couple load of clothes. And I said, I don't hear the washer and dryer going. And the washer and dryer was right against the, I guess you could say, the north wall of my apartment. I was staying in apartment number 1 at the 1880 Victorian there in St. Augustine. So I opened the door and looked out. No clothes on the floor. The washer and the dryer were empty. And I didn't hear anyone go up and down the steps. Now,
Wow.
you can get busy doing something and just tune everything out. So that's a
Yeah.
possibility. But my apartment, anyone going down the steps, and even when I went up and down the steps, even if I tried to be quiet, it was like clunk, clunk, clunk.
Yeah.
Those steps are just a vibrating, noise machine when you step
Yeah,
on
right.
them. So anyway, I went up to the second floor and the third floor to check to see if she was in either rooms. She wasn't there. There
Oh.
was nothing in either room. The doors weren't locked. So she had already left, and I didn't even hear it. And I thought, well, that was strange. The whole thing seemed strange to me, but
Yeah.
I didn't think about her being a ghost or a spirit until later on. But I thought she could, I was thinking maybe she is Margaret Key, because she looked a lot like the elderly woman that I gave a hug to coming up the steps crying. And I found out later on, I was talking to different people in Apalachicola because I'd always go back and visit. And I talked to one lady and I asked her, I said, have you ever been in the Key house when Mrs. Key was alive? And she said, yes. She said that she had been like home nursing or whatever at one time, and she had been there on a regular basis. And I asked her, was there a mirror at the top of the steps on the second floor? She said, yes. How would you know? And I said, well, I've never been there, but I just told her I was told about it because I didn't want to scare her off by saying,
Right.
no,
Yeah,
as a
yeah, right.
paranormal researcher, I wanted more information. So she actually, I asked her, well, what's the story behind the mirror? Because I knew that something involved that mirror, and she was crying about it. And that's when the lady told me, well, she said the neighbor that lived next to her in the large house towards the south of her property came and got that mirror when she passed away. And she wanted that mirror to stay with the house. Now, I don't know, how great that mirror was, but some of the old mirrors had some really good decorative wooden trim and were very attractive type wood around them. So anyway, that's what that dream was about. And I had an opportunity to go to this gentleman's store and bring it to his attention. And I just looked at him and I said, that mirror that was at the top of Mrs. Key's uh, stairway on the second floor, and he automatically got defensive. Oh, that was mine. I had given that to her to borrow, and I just took it back when she died. So he automatically got defensive. And I just said, well, I think that Mrs. Key would like you to put it back. And I asked him, would you please consider putting it back? And then I just walked out. And I think that's what she wanted me to do. At least that's the message I got. So
Right.
when ghosts and spirits do communicate with me, I try to pass the message on in a way that I think they would like it to be passed on, you know.
Yeah.
So I have no idea if he ever put it back, but he got really defensive right away. It was like it wasn't no denying or not knowing anything about a mirror. He just came off right away. That was mine. I'd given it to her. I lent it to her. So when she died, I got it back.
Yeah.
It's sad the way
Yeah.
people, when
For
they
sure.
leave, will just put what a dead person wants. Just they don't care anymore once they pass away, and they just do what they want with that dead person's property if they can get away with it. It's
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. For sure.
So I'm really hoping to go back and check out the 1880. I didn't want to write a book about the 1880 until I get a chance to go back and see if this young lady reappears.
Yeah,
If I
right.
see
I
her
mean,
again.
that's interesting though.
I know that chances are slim to none because routinely it had never happened to me before. But before I write the book about the 1880 Victorian, I would like to go back. And I haven't traveled much since 2021. I have kidney problems, chronic kidney disease, and a lot of times your blood pressure's all over the place. It'd be high 1 minute, low the next. And
Right.
I had a couple different doctors who keep wanting to change my medicine. And I say, my God, every time you change my medicine, it throws me for a really, really bad time.
Yeah.
So I finally got a doctor. I was able to talk him into taking me off the medicine, and just I would monitor it, and it goes up and down. If I see something, if something happens in my life I think is unfair and I don't like, it goes up. If I'm having a relaxing day, it goes way down. So I'm not on any blood pressure medicine now. And after they took me off that blood pressure medicine, my kidneys were functioning uh, up to 50% and a little over 50%. But when they kept changing that blood pressure medicine, my kidneys were like functioning maybe 33%.
Yeah, it's no good.
So now I'm happy with the way things are going with that. So I think I'm going to try to get some time to go back to St. Augustine, maybe a 2 week period at least, and stay there and
Yeah.
hope that that lady ghost of spirit follows up with me because I'd really
Right.
like to know who she is and if I'm the only one that can see her. You know, when people, so-called people that have psychiatric conditions, usually when they see something or hear something, it's negative. They very rarely hear or see something and it's neutral or positive.
Yeah.
And like with this young lady, it was almost as if she was shocked and awed that I could see her because she
Right.
just kept giggling about it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's almost like she did not expect me to be able to see her. So that could be me having some abilities to be able to see some ghosts and spirits at a certain frequency.
Right.
I don't think all ghosts and spirits are at the same frequency. And if their energy isn't at a frequency that we have the ability to see, because our eyes are limited to what we can visually see,
Yeah.
frequency wise, then we're not going to be able to see them, even if they are there.
Yeah. But have you seen other, like, I mean, like the way that you saw her, like you really couldn't differentiate whether she was real or not, right? Have you seen other ghosts like that too?
It's very rare. The only other
I was just
time
wondering if you had.
I have, but it's rare, and it's usually, um, just usually they'll say something profound. Like one time in Apalachicola, there was a lady that came up to me and she said, you're very unique. And I thought, oh no, it's going to be a lady complaining about me doing paranormal research. So I thought I was waiting for her to lay it into me about it. And I said, in what way? And she said, well, how many people do paranormal research by themselves like you? And she was starting to say that she thought I was and then a lady came up and said hello to me. It was like a bad time to be popular out on the street. And then when I looked back, she had walked away. So at that point in time, I don't know what I was doing. I think I was staying at the Hayes house. It was one weekend that I was visiting Florida when I was living in Houston, Texas. And I think I was on my way to go someplace and eat. So I didn't think about it anymore. But I would love to have heard what she thought I was.
Yeah.
She was about ready to tell me that I was something more than just a regular human being. At least that's what I was thinking. And I don't know. I saw her walking away, so she probably was a real person. Now, the other times that I can think of, when I was in the hospital with kidney failure, two doctors came and told me that I was going to die, which I didn't because I'm still here. And
Right. Are
that
you though?
really, that pissed me off because as a medic, I would never tell anyone they were going to die.
Yeah.
If a lot of people, a doctor's word is sacred with a lot of people. If so, a lot of patients, if the doctor says you're going to die, you just take their word for it. Where I've been in the army and all, so I don't take anyone's word for anything. Even a doctor's word. So anyway, I was in the ICU when they told me that I was going into renal failure, and they had moved me to a long-term care facility,
Okay.
at least for 30 days. I didn't know that at the time, but I found it out later on. And the long-term care facility was usually a step away from hospice,
Yeah.
which I didn't know either until later. So in this long-term care facility, about my second day there, they put me on a chemotherapy medicine because they were worried that my kidneys were so bad, what was left of them, my body would attack my kidneys thinking that they were a foreign object. So they put me on chemotherapy, and they didn't want me to have any visitors, which I didn't have many anyway. So uh, the nurse that I had that day was very high strung and very angry. So she came into my room and started barking out orders. And at that time, my mouth was very dry, and she wanted me to put the pills in my mouth and then drink the water. And they would stick to my tongue and cause me to choke. So anyway, that was a lady that probably shouldn't have been in nursing at all. So anyway, she was walking out as this woman was walking in. So I said, well, she must have saw her. And as this woman walked in, she sat at the chair at the end of my bed, and she told me that I was going to get better. I was going to fully recover. And I said, I think the same thing. And I smiled. And then she came over and shook my hand. And when she shook my hand, she took both hands and kind of held my hand. And she said she had to go. And she walked out. She gave me a business card. I said, well, how can I get in touch with you? And then she gave me a business card. And then was walking out as the nurse was walking in. So it's a very narrow space between the foot of the bed and the wall, and they kind of passed each other. So I thought they didn't say anything, so I knew she had to see her. So anyway, I went to sleep after that, And when I woke up, I couldn't find the business card. And I thought that nurse had taken the business card. So I asked the nurse, I said, where did that business card go that the lady gave me that was in here? And she said, you've had no visitors today, Mr. Evans. Really mean like.
Yeah.
And I said, well, the lady passed you as she came in. She passed you as she went out. And she said, I didn't see any lady. So that was another time. But believe me, if the average person sees a ghost or a spirit, they won't know it, because
Yeah.
the lady that came to my bedside and told me I was going to make a full recovery, which I have. I'm here right now, and it's, 2025, and this all happened early January of 2017. So the lady was right, and I never seen her again. And I asked the nurse, I said, well, who was that lady that came? And they said that I had no visitors that day.
So crazy.
So, and the only other time that was during the hospital stay was a lady who was dressed like a nurse, and they moved me really late at night. They didn't move me. I think there was an auto accident or something, and they had at least 3 people coming in, so they moved me 10:30 at night. And there was like a narrow hallway to get to this hospital within the hospital. And the nurse in the ICU was moving me, and she was met by another nurse and said, I know you're busy in the ICU. I'll take you from here. And she did. And that nurse brought me into my room. I still remember the room number. It was room 333. And she allowed me to scoot over into the bed while she held the stretcher so I wouldn't slide. And then it was almost 11 o'clock, and it was time for vital signs. And I asked her if she'd take my vital signs, and she did. And the strange thing about it, I hadn't published my book yet, because the book didn't get published until 2018, I guess late August. And I started telling her about my book, because I figured, nurses are going to be open to the paranormal. I'll try to get someone interested in my book. And I told her, I'm writing a book about the Hayes House ghost for people, too. And she says, yeah, I know all about your book, Mr. Evans. And I thought, well, how could you know all about my book? So anyway, that was kind of strange. But she took my vital signs, and as she was going out the door, I said, well, don't forget my chart. So the chart was at the foot of my bed, and I handed her the chart, and to the best of my knowledge, she took it. So about 12 midnight, a nurse came in my room and wanted to know who I was and why I was in this bed. Woke me up, and I thought, my God, am I in the Twilight Zone or what? And I said, well, a nurse brought me in here and put me in here. I hadn't been there, probably less than an hour and a half.
Right.
And she said, what did this nurse look like? And I described her. I said, she was gray hair, probably in her early 60s. There's no nurse here that looks like that. I thought, wow, this is kind of strange.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I said, well, she took my vitals. Go check. She got my vitals. So I told her who I was, and she checked, and she said, okay, you're Mr. Evans. You're supposed to be in here. And I thought, my God. It's just, I'm this badly ill, and this is the way the nurses are responding to me. So anyway, I got to stay in there, and she almost thought I was some type of homeless person trying to steal a bed for the night.
Right.
So anyway, it was one of those things where I don't know who this nurse was, but nobody else knew her. And I was there for 30 days, so they finally allowed me to walk with a walker. I had other complications too, like I had dry gangrene in 2 of my toes, and my circulation to my feet were really bad. So I would get up and walk in place, like you're marching in place beside the bed, so I could get the circulation going in my feet. because I didn't want to lose my feet. And, the doctors were more worried about saving my life, and, the feet, they say, can play second fiddle, but I wanted to keep both.
Right.
So one day they gave me a walker, and at first they weren't allowing me to walk on my own. And I got so sick and tired of having to walk with a nurse. They had this belt that they would tie around you, kind of like almost like a rappelling belt.
Yeah.
And then they keep pulling up on it, so I wouldn't fall, and that was uncomfortable. So I think one day I walked on my own, but after that they allowed me to just go with the walker and walk around and come back. But one time when I was walking with the walker, I saw that nurse again, the nurse that had brought me there that night, and she was pushing an elderly woman in a wheelchair, which I didn't know. And I said hello to both of them, and she just said the lady in the wheelchair doesn't talk. And I told her that I was out walking with my walker, and she said, "Yeah, I see you're doing well." And then she said she had to go, so she turned around and went the other way. And, there was like 3 nurses stations that was within this long-term care hospital within the hospital that I was in. But it was something that no person at my nurse's station knew this woman.
Huh.
And they said that no woman worked there that was that age.
Right.
And most of the nurses that were there were young. I would say 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility that she was a ghost or a spirit that only I could see.
Yeah.
I don't know who the elderly woman in the wheelchair was. Now, doppelganger.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the term doppelganger?
I am, yes.
That's when a ghost or a spirit appears to you looking like a person that you know and trust, so they can kind of give you like a message that they want you to follow and take. Well, when I was in the ICU the same time in the hospital, which was like January 1st of 2017, I guess my second or third day there, I also had internal bleeding above my esophagus because I had taken copious amounts of ibuprofen to help with the pain in my both knees and my lower back from in line of duty injuries with the Army. And the copious amounts of ibuprofen kind of erodes the blood vessels right above your esophagus, because that's where the ibuprofen seems to linger. If it lingers at all, sometimes it doesn't. So that was the area that was bleeding. And they were scheduling me to go back in for surgery to try to stop the bleeding in that area. And that morning, one of my doctors at that time, I was kind of confused. So I didn't know which doctor was which. But it turned out my kidney doctor had come, and she stood outside in the hallway, which the ICU is a very, very usually narrow U-shaped type building, or triangular shape. Not triangular shape, but larger than a square. I'm trying to think of the term.
Like a rectangle.
Rectangle. And with the rooms on at least 3 sides and a nursing station that takes up one side, and it's about the width of 2 hallways.
Yeah.
So my room was really close to the hallway, but the kidney doctor always came inside the room and talked to me. But this time she stood on the outside and she smiled. I said, "Well, what are you smiling about?" I figured she had good news. And she said, "Your bleeding has stopped." I said, "Oh, that's good. So I want to go to surgery." And then she walked away. So when the nurse came and said, "Mr. Evans, it's time for you to go to surgery," and I said, "Well, I'm not going," because the doctor said the bleeding had stopped. So they wanted to know what doctor. Of course, I didn't know the doctor's name because I was still somewhat confused. So the nurse just said, "Mr. Evans, you're your own worst enemy. You're going to die if this bleeding doesn't stop. You should go down to surgery. And I said, no, I'm not going because the doctor said it had stopped. So the surgery, I think, was scheduled for like 3 p.m. And about 5 p.m. before breakfast was served, the nurse came in and she said, well, Mr. Evans, I draw your blood and your red blood cell count is going up. So the bleeding had stopped. And
That's
she just
crazy.
stayed quiet because she had scolded me so bad.
Right.
So anyway, I never had to have any more surgery to stop that bleeding.
Wow.
So I don't know. And that kidney doctor, I kept her for a couple years until she moved away. And I asked her one day, I said, remember that time you came to my ICU room and stood out in the hall and told me that the bleeding had stopped? I asked her, how did you know that? And she said, Mr. Evans, that wasn't me. I had no way of knowing. So I think that was a doppelganger. Who wanted me to know that.
Right.
Had they went in that sensitive area and messed with it anymore, it might have caused it to bleed worse.
Yeah, possibly. Wow. Well, Keith, we've got to wrap it up, but your stories are amazing. I want you to tell the audience where they can find you.
Well, I have a YouTube channel called Paranormal Short Sessions by Keith Evans, and it's free to subscribe. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. And my two books, Vampires Dead or Alive, it's available on Amazon, paperback, ebook on Kindle, and The Hayes House Ghost for People 2 is available only on Kindle.
Okay.
So I hope everyone will check out the books. I would say my favorite book is The Vampires Dead or Alive, just because it's brand new information. It's not just when someone writes about their paranormal research, you're getting similar things just retold by different ghosts and different spirits and a different paranormal investigator. But if you want something brand new or something just totally, blows your mind, most people haven't thought about some of the things that I thought about when it comes to how vampires do what they do. So if you're into science and you want to learn something new, read The Vampires Dead or Alive by Keith Evans.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we appreciate you coming on, and we'll do it again soon.
Okay, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, Keith. All right.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe on my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they feeling the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown. All the lights are fading.